Well, skates are underway here at Oilers main camp as I'm pleased to welcome in Jack Michaels and Bob Stauffer to the panel presented by Sportsnet. And Bob will maybe get to the competition down the middle, down the depth chart here in just a few moments. But how about the top line? As expected, Connor Brown skating with Connor McDavid.
Well, to start, and I actually think that Connor Brown looks pretty good. Like, I'm surprised at the pace that he's playing at, given the fact that he, is coming off a torn ACL. He told me yesterday he feels like he's at about 95%. 95% looks pretty good because, you're lining up next to a Ferrari. So you got to be good to go. So, Vander Kane, Connor McDavid, Connor Brown, I like the sounds of that line, and obviously that leaves the Oilers in a position where they have Leon Draisaitl playing with Nugent Hopkins and Hyman. So that could be as good a top six as there is in the National Hockey League.
Well, Connor Brown has certainly looked good here in the early portions of Oilers main camp. But one player who's also stood out, Jack, Lane Peterson, obviously signs a 2-year contract in the summer, the one-way contract with the Edmonton Oilers. He looks to fulfill a bottom six role here in Edmonton.
Well, and he's getting a little extra reps in terms of the fact that Ryan McLeod is unavailable to the Oilers. I don't think it's significant when it comes to what's ailing McLeod, but the fact remains is when you're getting that extra ice time, when you're getting reps with players, further up in the lineup than perhaps you were initially projected, you've got to take the most opportunity to make a lasting impression, not only to secure your place on this year's team, but then to potentially secure you being next man up in terms of getting into that top 9 as opposed to just being a fourth line guy, which Lane Peterson has been. He plays with a little jam. He's a guy that other players know around the league, primarily because he's not afraid to get into the mix. He's the classic bottom six guy. I think Brandon Sutter is a guy that needs to, again, create the impression that he's ready to graduate from a PTO, that the 2 years, are starting to melt off. This is what training camp is all about. And also just joining the group's pace, because the pace that Bob talked about in that top 6 has been established by the top, which means Connor McDavid, which means there's a reason why guys are here September 5th, which means there's a reason that they're locked in, not for the start of the season, but for what they hope will be a 110-game season. This is not a club that's angling to be ready for Game 1. This is a club that's angling to be ready for the 1st of June.
And it's the top guys that are setting the tone, as Jack mentioned. But that competition in the bottom 6, specifically down the middle of the ice, obviously you have Ryan McLeod, but then you got Peterson, Sutter, as Jack mentioned. Oh, yeah, and of course, Sam Gagner as well, who's also here on a PTO, Bob.
Yeah, but he's a ways away. I think we have to be pragmatic with Sam, and I think that really when I look at this, I think McLeod's a stone-cold. Murderwalk is a third liner when he gets back. I don't think there's any debate about that. So really it's going to come down to Sutter or Peterson as to who's going to be the 4C, and they're going to need a right shot. Derek Ryan has basically played wing, and even if Sam Gagner were 100% healthy and was further along in terms of rehabbing the hip surgery, the reality of the situation is he's basically been a right winger the last several years. So to me, it is between Sutter and Peterson, two guys, ironically enough, quite connected to Red Deer over the years. And Ken Holland was quite effusive in his praise of Sutter as to what he theoretically could do. So that's an interesting storyline to watch. But as Jack mentions, Peterson a couple times last year got outside of his comfort zone and showed his willingness to compete and scrap for a job in the NHL. And, no worse than maybe being the first call-up for the Oilers, if indeed Sutter ends up getting signed to a regular contract.
And Jack, how about the competition between the pipes? Of course, we know that Stuart Skinner provided quality goaltending throughout the campaign last season. Jack Campbell, maybe not off to the best start or the start he hoped for in an Edmonton Oilers uniform. What do you think of the healthy competition and maybe the dialogue that was shared on the opening day of training camp?
I think it's the same for the goaltender position as it is along the rest of the lineup. I think what the Oilers would like to accomplish in the regular season is have a certain number of guys reclaim a larger share of the hockey club. And what I mean by that is each guy, perhaps in the bottom 6, the third pair, certainly the goaltending position, take a few more minutes, take a few more games in the goaltender position. That way, and again, this is why I go back to not a club that's angling to be ready for Game 1. They want to be ready to go in the postseason. One of the ways you're ready to go in the postseason, I'm going to use a dirty phrase in another sport right now, load management. And I don't mean guys sitting out games. I don't mean throwing away games in the regular season. What I mean is maybe some guys can push forward and take 11, 12 minutes a game. Maybe in a D pairing, they can take 14, 15 minutes instead of 10, 11. Maybe it's a club that plays to a 48 to 50 win expectancy instead of pushing hard to get 55 or 56, so they're that much ready to go. What Jack Campbell wants to do is create a more than healthy competition to take potentially the 1A spot instead of the 1B spot, to push Stuart Skinner, and while at the same time allowing Skinner to have maximum energy when he's needed, whether it be in the postseason or in the latter stages of the regular season. They don't want a 55-27 split this year in net. That I can assure you.
Yeah, and I think in a perfect world, we're looking like a 44-38 game split. But I'll take it one step further. Who says you have to ride just one guy come playoff time? We've seen teams win Stanley Cups before, and some people say, well, that means you don't have a number one goalie. Well, not so fast. We're in the West. There's travel issues during the course of the season. And, I mean, is it out of the realm of possibility in a 6-game series each guy could get at least 2 starts? So who says you don't? And I'm totally with Jack. I mean, I look at the potential deployment with the defense once Mattias Ekholm comes back. I think we're going to see Philip Broberg with him. And I see Ek playing 20 minutes a game and Broberg not playing 13 minutes a game, but playing 16 or 17 minutes a game. I see Kulak and Ceci being capable of playing. Ceci's played 20 minutes a game. Maybe he plays 18 minutes a game, and maybe Kulak is 17, 18. And that leaves Nurse and Bouchard, who've been together the first couple days, playing 22 minutes a game. And then for the forwards, I'm with Jack there as well. I can see Connor and Leon maybe being cut back by a minute a game. And I look long-term, and they might not be aligned to start with, but Holloway, McLeod, and Fogle, they had that big game in New York that kind of got some things going for a stretch there. And I wonder whether or not those guys can't play 14, 15 minutes. Well, we know McLeod can, but the other two maybe get to the point where they're 14, 15 minutes a game, and that can back off the gas pedal on the Oilers' 2 top players, Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl.
Because even though they can do it, I think long-term the Oilers are better served if McDavid isn't playing 26 minutes in, say, an overtime win in the regular season. If Darnell Nurse isn't playing 31 minutes in a game in January. Because when you need him to play 35, 40 minutes in an overtime playoff game, that much more will still be in the tank.
Can't wait to see all of these storylines play themselves out throughout main camp and preseason, which begins on Sunday against the Winnipeg Jets.